Hello, Amy. Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here today with us.
Thank you, Lee. Great to be here.
No, it's awesome. Whereabouts are you?
I am in Sacramento, California.
In California. Awesome. The weather's no doubt good there at the moment.
It's hot. It's about 100
Is it?
degrees. Yeah, Celsius. Yeah.
100 degrees. What's that, about
Or
30,
Fahrenheit. I mean, sorry.
33
I
degrees
think it's
Celsius or
30
something?
something. Yeah, Celsius. Yeah.
Divided by three. I don't really know. Okay, well, that doesn't sound too bad. It's nice and cool here at the moment, but just passing through winter. But let's get into our conversation. And to start with, I'd like for you to give us a bit of an intro into what you do, your profession. You've also written a book. So yeah, give us a bit of a glimpse.
Sure. So I spent about 20 years working in executive roles in pretty large corporations. Before that, I was an attorney and did a bunch of litigation and some social justice work.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up to executive roles and found that there were a number of things that I wish I had known on my way up. And so when I founded my consultancy for coaching and consulting, I brought those together into a self-assessment for leadership as well as a book.
Okay.
So
So working in the executive space for some time, and now you've gone out into the coaching world and
yes,
helping those same people that you are working with
yes,
to become better leaders, and you also help with people develop into leadership roles. Is that right?
I do. And so I help remove barriers. We work together either on teams. I work with executive teams, and a lot of teams have hired people during the pandemic that they never met. So they're now
Yeah.
coming back together now that people are started traveling again and getting together. And they want to set social norms. CEOs want to get everyone on the same page, get everyone aligned, and to make sure that people understand the culture and what they're trying to achieve in terms of their mission and strategies. So I do that for groups as well as then for individual executives. Sometimes people come to me directly. They may have been given difficult feedback around a derailing behavior, or sometimes their boss or manager sends them to me and we work through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very rewarding. And then I also do some work in social justice. I testified for the Women on Boards laws in the United States, in California, Oregon, and Washington, and I've done some work with disability rights and other areas. So it's my whole passion is around, Lee, is around access to your full potential, whatever you want that to be. So removing barriers, whether it's in the legal sphere or in the corporate environment, and helping people be self-aware so they can really realize their full potential.
Okay. So self-awareness would be a starting point for a lot of people to help them realize that full potential.
Yes, it is definitely. I
Yeah.
believe in radical self-reliance, and I think anyone who's worked long enough in an organization realizes you've really got to take ownership of your career in order to be a fully satisfied human being, in the long
Yeah.
haul, and having honest discussions with yourself about the impact that you have on others and what your capabilities are, and getting feedback and being okay with getting tough feedback that you might not even agree with, or you might not even respect the person, but being aware of what others' perceptions are of you is the only way that you can, kind of regain control to then potentially change it if it's not what you want it to be, if it's not having the
Mm.
impact that
Yeah.
you want it to be. Because
I
we all have blind
suppose.
blind spots.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's being vulnerable, isn't it? And I guess
Yes, and
vulnerability is
courageous.
something that we wish to avoid.
Yes, we do at our peril, I would say, especially if you're ambitious and
Yeah.
you want to kind of get to the top and you want to achieve a lot. You've got to be willing to hear what our brains actually try to protect us from hearing.
Mm.
We have to fight that impulse and be vulnerable and courageous, as you say.
Okay. Is that the is that sort of the idea behind the PI index which you've created, the
Ah,
promotability index?
yes, it is. My goal was to make the principles of coaching and promotability accessible to anyone, because not everybody can afford a coach and not all organizations will pay for a coach for people. And so it was a lot of the things that I wish I had known coming up the
Okay.
ladder.
So it's a book that I could get if I'm in a workplace to help me advance my career, essentially. Is that
Yes.
and it's a
You
guidebook,
t
isn't it? More so.
It is. It's a guidebook. It's got a journaling aspect to it, and it has over 30 exercises that are tied to the free assessment that I offer on my website that breaks promotability down into 5 key elements, which is
Yep.
self-awareness, external awareness, so what your impact is on other people, strategic thinking, executive presence, and thought leadership. And so you take it's 82 questions, you take the self-assessment, it gives you the results. And then if you want to work on those things, you can buy the book and work on them either with your manager, which is a great way to show
Yeah.
vulnerability and get the feedback and say, hey, this is how I rated myself. How would you rate me? Or, is my self-perception aligned with how you view me? And that can be a really rich discussion because you know where you stand, what your chances of advancement are. You can have a really rich career development discussion. And I've had several people who have said that it really solidified their relationship with their leader and gave them a shared language for how to talk about what was missing or what they were really great at. And they often got very positive feedback on things that they hadn't been aware of.
Yeah, interesting. Is this this is available online, obviously, at your website, which we can stick in the show notes.
Okay.
And that's barnardbahn.com.
Yes.
I won't spell that out, guys, but check out the link in the show notes. We'll stick the link there. This is available for any employee manager relationship, like because in any profession, I suppose. Could we grab this assessment and run with it?
Yeah, you can. It's I've coaches even use it, and they use my workbook as well with their clients.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's written for Fortune 500 type companies, but when I piloted it, I had some consultants and independent entrepreneurs and other people who worked in government, and they still said that they got a
It was
lot out of
beneficial.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what were those 5 areas again?
Self-awareness,
Self-awareness.
external awareness,
Mm-hmm.
strategic thinking,
Yep.
executive presence, and
Yep.
thought leadership.
Okay. So are they the 5 key areas we need to sort of focus on to help us advance in our role? Yeah.
Yes.
So when you look in a workplace today, what do you find are the greatest, it's usually around people, I assume, but what are the greatest challenges you see that workplaces face today? Is it that relationship between people in the workplace?
I think so. People are so burned out, specifically right now after COVID, and middle management, I think, has really been crushed in terms of the expectations and the return to work and managing remotely, and then probably their own family, issues and staying healthy. And it's just been a real crush for everyone. And so it's put more of an onus on leaders to really reach out to understand what's going on. There's been a bit of a breakdown in what would normally be a boundary between work and life, whether I share with you that I'm caretaking my elderly mother, or whether my kids have COVID and I just can't manage right now and I need a break and someone needs to pick up the slack. There's a lot of that going on. And then of course managers have that as well. So what I see with my executive clients is just fatigue and trying to recharge. This summer, I think, has been a really good time, and a lot of companies have recognized that we hit a wall and that they need to give people a reprieve in order to keep them. And the great resignation, the great reset, whatever you want to call it, in terms of a lot of people just saying, forget it, I can't do this anymore. My life isn't working.
So you're seeing that? Is that fairly large scale, or?
I have seen it, and my leaders have had a lot of people leave, and that has generated and spurred more of a focus on the caretaking and on, I think, individuation of leadership, and knowing, me having more of a focus on what specifically makes you tick and what motivates you and what do you need from me. You might be a hands-off kind of person that actually doesn't need a lot of management, and that's great, but I should know that at this point, with all the working remote. Maybe you're someone who actually really needs society, and you want the interaction, you need the feedback from me that you're doing a good job in order to keep going. So I, as a manager, need to know, situational leadership in terms of who needs what, and are you getting that, and in order to retain you and have you stay. And so I think there is more of a focus on that.
So do you see the workforce, and again, I'm external to what you're seeing, do you see the workforce going back to how it was, or is it now changing to this situation where it's half and half, like a hybrid model where people are still working from home and companies are pushing for more of that for cost saving initiatives, whatever it might be? Which way do you see it going? Like, is it going to get back to the pre-COVID sort of ways, or?
I think it depends on the industry. The
Yeah.
tech industry can do a lot remotely,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the financial services industries are calling everybody back full time. Goldman Sachs, all the big investment firms, and then everybody else I think is somewhere in between. I mean, there's some workers that have never stopped working in person. All the distribution centers, frontline healthcare, hospitals, a lot of healthcare, and a lot of personal services and hospitality. Those are all in person. So those people have never been given a reprieve. Everything kind of in the middle, like banking, unless it's at a teller, I think is probably hybrid right now. And I would expect that to continue for a few more years until we really know whether we've gotten COVID under control or not. It'll be really interesting after that point. I don't think we've reached that point yet because the virus is still evolving. After that point, it'll be interesting to see if corporations wield their power, frankly, that they always have because they pay the paychecks, and whether they allow for more flexibility, or whether they draw the line and call everybody back, like Marissa Mayer did at Yahoo many years ago when she had her own crib for her baby next door to her office. So that rankled a lot of people, and that was a big deal because they had been the leaders. This is before COVID. Yahoo had a lot of liberal policies around working from home, but sometimes CEOs just say, you know what, I don't think we're getting enough done. Something comes to them or an issue happens and they can get reactive, and that can happen. So it will be really interesting to see. I think it will depend on the culture of the company. I think nonprofits, are usually a little more flexible around this, but it always depends on the leader.
It's interesting. There's got to be a mentality around leaders who feel like they're not if they can't see people working, i.e. people working remotely, and the productivity is not where they want it to be, they would assume that because people aren't in the office and I can't see them working, that things aren't getting done. Like, how do they measure that level of productivity? Because I've heard reports that in many industries, that people that are allowed to have that flexibility work environment and work from home actually have better productivity than working in a work environment.
There is some evidence to indicate that, definitely. And I think when you have a good work-life balance and you can handle everything on your own time, when you're motivated to do it, if your job allows that flexibility, then it's great. It's a win-win. Leaders should manage by outcome. They should measure results, not face time. But some leaders do measure face time. In some industries and corporations, their culture is about face time, and there is a bias for office-based cultures. There is a bias towards people who are there, who are physically seen, and that has already been proven to disproportionately impact women, who usually take on more of the caretaking responsibilities, whether it's children or the older generation. It's not always true. Of course, men are caretakers as well, but disproportionately it usually falls to women. And so over the past couple of years, we've seen less promotions, we've seen less movement ahead, and people surmise that there's a bias around the presenteeism, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as a leader myself, I feel that, because I guess I'm a workaholic maybe, and I'll get in early and leave early. And I guess you do measure the results, but if you don't have them here and the results aren't coming in, then you might question, okay, well, what's going on? I need, you just feels like it's the presence that is necessary, even though the results.
It really gets down to trust, doesn't it? And you build trust by showing results, or by being with the person. So if you don't have either, or if it's something that's very hard to measure, or if someone's not keeping you up to date, I think that's really important right now too, is if people are remote, making it clear as a leader how you want to be updated, how frequently, what data you want to see. That's critical to a good working relationship, and everybody should be having that conversation if they haven't already.
Yeah, so I think that's and going back to the promotability index, can't even say the word, going back to the PI index, it's all around that communication, isn't it? Like to be able to sit in that relationship and have those discussions and be fully transparent with each other, both the employee and the boss. So how do we go about doing that? How do we, as a manager or an employee, how do we become more self-aware and develop the skills to have that level of communication?
Well, I think you just start having the dialogue. You prepare by doing as honest a self-assessment as you can. And
how do you do an honest self-assessment?
I would think back to feedback you've been given all your life, you know, whether it's your mom or your first job, and what are themes that keep popping up for you, right? Is it that you can be defensive about criticism when someone criticizes your project or how you've handled something? Is it that you can come across as intimidating or arrogant? Is it that you don't speak up? Is it that you're too quiet and you actually don't assert yourself in a way that helps to lead results and lead your team forward? It could be any of those. And so you think about those. The Promotability Index assessment has provocative questions to try to help get at that. They're worded in a way that's also intended to increase awareness simply by reading them and by thinking, oh, that's important. Have I thought about that in a while? I wasn't seeing it. That was a link to promotability. A lot of people, especially younger people in their 30s, have gotten back to me and said, gosh, now that I think about it, I realize that is important, but I never knew that was important. So that can help. And then going to your boss and just saying, hey, I took this self-assessment. I really want to do my best. I want to see what you think. So can you sleep on this overnight? And at our next one-on-one, I'd love to talk about it with you, because I'd love to see, one or two areas that I can improve in. It's important not to assign too much homework to yourself. If you're a type A perfectionist, then you can easily go overboard, but nobody can handle more than one or two behavior changes at a time. We have our habits for very good reasons. If, especially the older we get, they've been serving us and in general doing us well, or wouldn't be where we are. But as we move forward in our careers and evolve as human beings, usually there's one or two habits we've picked up that are no longer serving us and no longer going to ultimately make us happy. And so that's where the coaching can come in, or a really good mentor or sponsor of you that can give you feedback.
So in that self-assessment questionnaire you provide, I assume there's about 15 questions that people can go through?
It's 82.
82, but is that over the 5 categories, or is it 82
yes, it
for
is.
each? Okay.
It's 82 total.
82 total. Okay.
10 to 12 for each category.
For each. So as far as the self-awareness category goes, you could sit down and just do that segment first, and then break it down like that, rather than doing the full 82. I can imagine it could be quite overwhelming to go through 82 and.
Most people say it's fun. I kept it yes or no. I didn't do a Likert scale or anything. I wanted to keep it really simple. Try to make it fun. You can do it on your phone. The UX is good on it.
Okay. Yeah.
And the thing that I created about it as well is you can go back and take it again at any time. So the idea is it's something you come back to. I mean, no one really, in my opinion, can get an 82 score.
Yeah.
It's, if you're really honest, even I can't. And I know where, I'm working and need to work, or maybe I don't have motivation to work on something, and that's okay. Some people take it and they realize they don't want to get promoted. I've had that happen. One of my companies have adopted the PI for their entire organization. I have a case study on my website about it. And one of my leaders found that 1/3 of her direct reports didn't want to be promoted. And that was super helpful to her to know as well for succession planning.
Yeah.
And she said, great, then how do we keep you interested? If you don't want to get promoted, that's great. You want to be an individual contributor. How do we keep you learning and engaged and not bored in this job if you're going to keep this job for 5-10 years? So those were still really good discussions to have.
Is there any tools that you can give people to develop this self-awareness? Because I'm, again, just an assumption, but I assume when people are taking these assessments, there's this ego sort of barrier, maybe blocking them from answering the questions more authentically.
Well, and that's where comparing it or giving it to a friend or a partner, if you don't feel comfortable giving it to your boss, depending on how
It's always a good idea.
How much you trust your boss and you feel comfortable. you can get a lot of great feedback because if it's showing up at work, it's often showing up at home too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We're not two completely different people, and usually, actually, we lose our temper more with our loved ones than our coworkers.
Yeah.
So that can be a helpful way to do it. The guidebook was created as a companion to the
Okay.
assessment to help people work through it. So my best advice is in there.
What advice can you give us around improving our communication skills, whether it's at home or in the workplace? Because I assume that's an important part of it.
It is. I would say if you have the luxury of preparation, that's always fantastic, especially if it's a difficult message that you're communicating. So I would always take some time to prepare a few bullet points and have those in my head and run through what language am I using, what outcome do I want from the conversation, how is this going to hit the other person, is this bad news that I'm delivering, is this great news, who else should be there, should anyone be there, or is it a private conversation? Thinking through all of that so that you have the appropriate impact. What's the ultimate goal of the conversation, and then working backwards and designing that outcome, and then thinking of plan B, plan C if it doesn't go well.
So definitely preparation and planning would be ideal. I mean, imagine that's something that you'd probably see as a bit of a flaw in most situations. There's communications just blur rather than thought out, But if you don't have that, I guess that's one area that we could all improve, is having that preparation to a conversation. But what other challenges do you see other than the preparation side of things that are commonly done incorrectly with surrounding communication?
Well, we've seen companies announce layoffs on social media, so that's the biggest.
Social media must be a huge social. I imagine tech in general must be a huge issue. I find it a huge issue. Certainly, face to face must be the best method of communication, but
absolutely,
so many people rely on email and text to send messages, and I find that too often, even if it's not that important, too often messages can get messed up, in that sort of communication.
Yes. Face to face or Zoom to Zoom, if you need to, which is necessary for a lot of people that live far apart, is the best. There's no question. The next best is telephone. Individuals, I can hear your voice, I can hear your tone, I can hear whether you care or not. We can sense these things as humans. And then the least favored would be anything that could be misinterpreted and doesn't show respect, doesn't show that human element, which would be technology, text, emails, Slack, social media. That's not the way to make an announcement that impacts people's livelihoods, right? There was a CEO that fired everybody on a conference call and was taken to task. He temporarily lost his job for it, actually. And talked about, I can't remember which company it was, but he talked about how hard it was for him, which was a number 2 mistake. No one cares that it's hard for you, and no one believes it. You're keeping your job. So if you're a leader or you're the CEO, don't talk about how this is hard for you. No one cares.
That's got to be the hardest thing in any relationship, I think, is that no one cares about anyone else but themselves. And I don't mean that at a disrespectful level at all. I think that's a fundamental nature of humankind. So to take that away and put it on the other person, really have that ability to care for the other person, has got to be pretty tricky.
It takes a lot of emotional energy, and it's a gift of service to put yourself, and I think that's when the best communications happen. And having been an attorney and done employment litigation, I can tell you that when managers don't do it well, that's when we see a lot of employment litigation, because people get angry, they feel disrespected, and they're out for blood. And part of the reason I went into HR and then ethics and compliance and then coaching was to be in a position to help organizations do the right thing and prevent a lot of these unnecessary negative workplace situations that could have just been handled by showing more respect, by having a better conversation, by being more open about why someone wasn't performing. Another thing with communication is a lot of companies aren't honest and don't give employees the feedback they need. They don't have the courage to articulate exactly what they need and what isn't being done. And instead they'll, make up something else, or say they just don't have the budget, or that kind of thing. And people can tell, I think, if you're not being fully honest, and it's doing them a disservice because they may never learn what they need to do better, and they may carry that then to the next employer. And so that's important, I think, for employers to be open and honest.
Yeah.
So
is there anything wrong with that? I mean,
being open and honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's again going sort of to vulnerability too. You feel like by being open and honest, somehow you're going to be ridiculed, and it's okay to admit you've made a mistake. It's okay to be vulnerable and that you don't know, things like that.
It is really important for cultures to cultivate that, and leaders can model that. Is the best way for them to encourage others to come forward and have kind of what we would call a speaking up culture, where people feel comfortable being vulnerable and courageous in taking a stand, whether it's giving someone feedback or saying something isn't right, we need to do this differently, or have a concern about X or Y. We see so many areas of misconduct or fraud or embezzlement or wrongdoing, and companies just blowing up and imploding. And having a culture where people feel comfortable is critical. So I do a lot of work in corporate governance as well, kind of doing the right thing, lining people up to do the right thing, which
making
is
people
really
feel comfortable.
Yeah, and some cultures do a great job at it, and they have more innovation and more diversity and more openness to ideas, because the same characteristics that make us feel comfortable having difficult conversations also lead to sparks of innovation and good debate, whether an idea or a business model is going to work, or a product, or a new line of business. So that's really important. And so those same qualities of being able to hash it out but not take it personally, like you and I could get in a room and say, I don't think that's going to work because of this, and you can say, well, Amy, I don't think this is going to work because of this. We can hash it out, and if we can walk out arm in arm, and say, okay, great, that was a great discussion. I feel really committed now because I know all my ideas got out on the table, and so did yours. And maybe your idea, maybe you convinced me, or the CEO decided on your idea, but we can be a team going out because I already know I had my say. And there's kind of a feeling with most people of due process. We all want to be heard in some way or another. And so once we've done that, we can usually accept the decision, and that's much better than a false harmony around, okay, well, I didn't get my way, and I'm not gonna, that's what the CEO decided, but I'm not gonna support that decision. You can passive aggressively not support it, right? And that happens all over companies when people aren't given the chance to say their say and give their input.
So in those companies where you've seen really good cultures, what are the things that make those cultures tick? Like, what are the key features that you see around people being comfortable? One. Trust, yeah, okay.
Like you and I started talking about earlier, trust is absolutely number one. Do you trust that the company's going to, give you what you need in terms of fair working conditions, fair pay, a chance to speak up and have a say in your work, and treat you well, overall, treat you fairly? And then with your manager specifically, will they tell you what you're doing well? Will they tell you when you're not meeting expectations? Will they support your growth and development as a person? Our next generation is really expecting that. I have 2 teenage daughters, and the expectations have never been higher, I think, from any generation around fairness, equity, having meaningful work. And they're much more willing to walk away than prior generations if it's not meaningful work, and if they don't feel, a personal connection with the mission of the organization. And so that's going to be really interesting as they start to grow in the workforce, to see how they lead in a generation or two, and what compromises they might find they need to make or not, or if there's a new way of leading.
Yeah. What are you working on next yourself?
I've been working on delivering bad news, actually.
Delivering
something
bad
that we
news.
touched on earlier, and how to do that. I've done a couple of keynotes and interviewed a bunch of people, from people who served in Afghanistan to Wall Street executives, on their bad news stories, whether they turned out well or poorly. There's a lot of social science research that, around shoot the messenger. You've probably heard that phrase, and it's accurate, because we actually don't like people who bring us bad news. And the worse the news is, the more we immediately kind of from an animal instinct dislike them, and we actually distrust them.
Mm.
And in some cases, we even blame them for
Mm.
causing the bad news, even when they didn't. And that was
Yeah.
fascinating research for me to find out, because I work a lot in how do we create healthy workplace cultures. And to have a healthy workplace culture, you can't only have good news all the time, right? That just isn't reality. People learn, people need to learn from mistakes, or just even little errors in judgment, or and CEOs should want to have complete transparency into their business.
Yeah.
And so you need to
So you
cultivate.
avoid giving bad news because you don't want to be
A
judged
lot of people
for it,
do it, and
or don't want to
yeah,
have that
and
mistrust.
well, you've heard the yes man thing, right? Like some CEOs just hire yes people
Mm.
around them, and it's a danger,
Mm.
because the higher you get in an organization, the less information you get. You're at the top, and people at the bottom hear all the gossip, hear all the scuttlebutt, about everything, and get a lot of random information. They may only see the tip of the iceberg, but they get a lot of information. And the higher you get, the more you're in an echo chamber with your executive peers, and the less people are willing to stick out their neck or say, I heard this, is this just a rumor? Or is this real? What does this mean we're doing about this? Or that kind of thing. So very important for CEOs and leaders to create a communication strategy from bottom up. When I
Yeah.
was in roles, I would have coffees every quarter where anybody could, up to 20 people could sign up, and it was ask me anything. And I'd take 20 people out to coffee, and we'd sit at a round table, and I would literally take anything that they had. And then I had a different strategy for my middle executive VPs. I would go to their meetings regularly. I'd have them, they would submit questions to me in advance if they wanted to, and I would present at their meetings. And of course, I had my executive team meetings and my one-on-one with the CEO. So I think that each group, kind of the communication strategy is a little bit different.
Mm.
And the more power you have in the relationship, the more you need to make it really psychologically safe for the other person who has
Yep.
less power in the relationship, if you really want to know what's going on, and you
Yeah.
should.
Yeah. And that going back to delivering bad news, the idea of you losing trust with me when I deliver bad news, even though it's not my problem, is something that I come across often enough. So how do you go about, what's your 3 tips to delivering bad news? Just briefly, I suppose.
Yeah, I actually created a 6-step
6
process
steps.
after
Okay.
I codified it after interviewing everyone, and seeing commonalities in it. So the first is to psychologically prepare your audience, and so that they realize, oh, bad news is coming. Because when we are surprised by bad news, we actually freeze for like one fraction of a second, and it's that fight or flight response. It's activated.
Yeah.
So if we're prepared, like if I came to you, Lee, and I said, hey, I wish I had better news. And if I started our conversation with that, you'd probably take it. You may not even be aware of it, but you'd probably take a deep breath,
Yep.
physically, and be like, okay, what do you have to tell me? So that little heartbeat of a
Preparation
moment,
there.
really
Yep.
important to prepare your audience to hear it, so they're not shocked. Then the second is to rehearse confident delivery. So this assumes you have time to prepare. Not all of us have time to prepare, but if you do, use it.
Yep.
And practice it with your words. The third is to be fully present and fully focused. Sometimes when you're the bearer of bad news, you can really get freaked out. You can psych yourself out about it. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to get fired? Am I, is this person not going to like me anymore?
Yeah.
What if I had a hand in it? Are they going to hate me? Am I a bad person?
You
there's so many
become too much
you could just
inwardly.
go, or you could just totally spiral downwards, right? So you want to be fully present and fully focused, so that the person feels that you're empathetic and that you care. That's very important. And that leads to the fourth point, which is convey benevolent, proactive intent, which is, Lee, this happened. If I had a hand in it, I might apologize. I say, I'm sorry. I didn't see this coming. This is what I'm doing about it. And that's when you move into the proactive intent around, I'm going to own this. I wanted you to know, so I'm telling you, and this is what me or my team is doing about it. The fifth point, which is really important, is explain without justifying. A lot of people, and I'm sure you've seen this in the media, when people make statements, they try to justify. And it's really important to stay away from that because that can cause a backlash against you as the messenger. If you try to make excuses, right? I'm sure you've had that experience.
Yep. Can relate to that.
Or done it yourself. I know I did it when I was a kid. I mean, kids do it all the time, right? Yeah, but he made me do it, or
Hmm.
it's the adult version of that. And then the sixth is to add a sense of urgency. So if it's something that has happened, say in a large organization, like a ethical violation or a compliance issue, or something that is urgent for the company to address, you want to make sure that they address it. Some bad news messengers have a run the risk of trying to downplay the severity of the issue in order to kind of get off the hook. Like, well, it's bad, but it's not that bad, right? Well, if it is really bad, you don't want to lessen the pressure for the organization to do something. Especially if it's a widespread issue. It depends on what the issue is. But if I'm assuming it's something pretty bad, like a lot of the ones that I've worked on, and you want that urgency, because without urgency, you can't initiate a large change.
Hmm. Yeah, good points. I like it. I'm glad
Thank
I
you.
asked. Are you going to write a book about this, or?
I've thought about it. I'm
Hmm.
I'm pressure testing interest. I
Yeah,
just wrote the PI book last year, so I need a little bit of a break.
I
But
think
we'll
it could be
see.
adaptable across many parts of life, or work all life, delivering bad news. So yeah, look forward to
Yeah.
seeing it, Amy. And
Thank
just want
you.
to thank you for coming on the show. You've got the website there that we'll stick the link in the show notes. Barnard-Bahn.com. Is there any other ways people can connect with you or find out more about your work?
Yes, I would love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook. I'm on all the Instagram. I'm on all the channels, mostly on LinkedIn, and my website. And they're welcome to take the free Promotability Index assessment.
Yeah,
And then if they want to work on it, they're welcome to buy the book.
it's pretty cool. Okay, well, all the links to your social media channels are in your website,
Yes.
I assume as well. So, guys, check it out. This is Amii Barnard-Bahn, and thank you for coming on, Amy.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Lee. It was wonderful.
Cheers. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.